We're making a bed skirt, my favorite way to make a bed skirt. It's a tailored bed skirt, so not ruffled. Tailored means it has box pleats in the corners and then one on each center section. We're going to put it onto a deck. This is the deck. Okay, so we have the decking for the bed skirt ready to go, and the bed skirt here is almost ready to go. It just needs to have the box pleats put into place, which I've pinned out with pins, and I'm going to show you how to put the box pleats in before attaching it to the skirt. But before I do that, I want to show you the math and how I came up with the distances between the pleats and how many cuts I needed and all that. So here's my work order. It's kind of messy, so I'm going to just redo it and explain it step by step for you. So first I plotted out the actual size of the box spring on a piece of graph paper just to start from scratch. So the width of the mattress is 76 and the length is 80, and our drop is going to be 15.5 inches. So I put a little mark in the center of each side, and that means that we're going to have a box pleat in each of the center sides, because this is a tailored box pleat bed skirt rather than gathered or ruffled. And if it was box pleated like a traditional box pleat, it would have a lot of box pleats all the way around. But tailored means typically you just have one in each center and then one at each corner here and here, and a half of a pleat up at the head here and here. With this all plotted out, I like to go ahead and draw in the actual skirt in like a bird's eye view. So if I'm looking at this from up above, I'm gonna see that we're gonna have one whole section of fabric at the 40-inch mark. So from the head of the bed to the middle section, that's 40 inches. And then we're gonna have a box pleat here, and it goes back and it comes forward, and then we start the next section. So that means we need a 40-inch section of fabric there, 40 inches here, and then this is a box pleat here and a box pleat here, and then a half of a box pleat over here. And I like to do 20 to 24 inches in my box pleats, and in this case I did 20. So if I have a 20-inch whole box pleat, then in the half box pleat I'm going to do 10 inches. This is going to go back 5 inches that way and over 5 inches that way. And then here we have 5, 5, 5, and 5 for 20 inches. And then in the corner, we're going to have another section that rounds the corner. So this is also 20 inches in the box pleat. And then to the middle, since it's 76 inches wide, that means this half is 38 and this half is 38. So then I have a whole box pleat here, and remember this is a whole one over here, so that's 20 inches. Here we have 20 inches, and then same thing on the other side. Okay, so this is a half, 10 inches. And so I'm referring to this part in the back, that's 10 inches, not the front. The front part is 40 inches here and 40 inches here. So it's this part in the back, that's 20, 5, 5, 5, and 5. And this is 5 and 5 for 10. So then over here, same thing, that's a half of a box pleat, and this is half, but together it makes up a whole 20 inches. So that's how it looks from a bird's eye view, and I like to add another 3 inches on each end for a side hem. So we have 3 inches plus 10 plus 40 plus 20 plus 40 plus 20 plus 38 plus 20 plus 38, 20 over here, 40, 20, 40, 10 plus 3 right here for the side hem. So that's how much fabric I need to go all the way around the bed skirt. And the fabric is 54 inches wide. And the other thing you want to consider is that you don't want to see the seams on the face of the skirt. So I like to hide them somewhere inside the pleats. And in this case, because it was a stripe, it was really easy to hide it and to plan the cuts. If this was like a floral or a toile, or there was, you know, a big repeat, it would be a little bit more complicated. But because it's just a stripe, it was really easy to map it out and hide the seams. And I'll show you with the fabric over there in a minute. But basically I started with one seam right in the middle at the foot of the bed, and then I was able to use the rest of the one whole cut of 54 inches to do that half of the box pleat, and then go this way with the 38. And then my other seam was over here. So that means I had the 38 inches, and then this half of this pleat is 10 inches. So that's 48. So I was left with, if you do 54 minus 48, I was left with 6 inches to work with over here. So that means the seam was actually more like the back over here, since this is 5 and this is 5. So it was somewhere back here. That means I needed another 14 inches here for the rest of the 20-inch seam, and then I could use one whole cut here. Left me with the seam right like an inch after I turned it, which means I think I ended up with 13 inches here, because my box pleats ended up, some of them are 19.5 and some of them are a little bit over 20 actually. So even though I was shooting for 20-inch pleats, some of them ended up 19.5 and some of them ended up 21, just because of the spacing and how I wanted to hide the seams. With this seam being right here, if you figure the opposite for this side, that means I'm going to use a whole width for this space of 40 inches, and this whole pleat here, which is only 10, plus the 3-inch side hem, that's 53 inches. That means I'm going to have another seam right there, and so I need to have another section of fabric to make this pleat right here. So I have 2 seams in this box pleat. I don't need any over here, and I ended up with one over here, one in the middle here, and then this one will be the same as this one. And then that means over here I'll have a seam there and here with a smaller section of fabric there. So I have one whole width of fabric. 1W means one width, and one width here. There's no seams over here. This is one width, this is one width, one here, and then I need this amount right here. So let's just call that, since we have about an inch and an inch, let's just call this 20 for the cut, because I'll lose a little bit in the seam allowance. So 20 and 20, I can get both of those out of one cut. So I need, for those 2 pleats, one more cut. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cuts. 7 cuts, and my drop is 15.5. So I want to add 2 inches for bottom hem, plus a ½ inch for seam allowance, plus another 2 inches to play with. So 15.5 plus 2.5 plus 2, and that equals 20 inches for my cuts, which is not the same as this. What I'm referring to is, as I unroll the fabric on the bolt, and it's a stripe, so here's what it looks like coming off the bolt. I'm going to cut each of my 7 cuts at 20 inches this way. So the stripes are vertical, and I'll use, this is 54 inches, I'll use one whole cut in each of these main sections where I put the 1W. So 1 cut, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th cut I'm going to divide by 2 and cut them down a little bit more even from there, and put those in these pleats right here. So 7 times 54, that means you have 378 inches of fabric to work with. So that's a little bit of how the math works. And here was my less fancy way to figure it. So now I'm going to show you how it looks on the actual fabric over here. This is the skirt. So I have the lining in and a bottom hem of 2 inches. And the finished length is 15.5, plus I have 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top of that. So it's already serged and ready to stitch to the skirt, but I have to put the box pleats in. These pins that I have in here indicate where the box pleats are gonna go. So this is the very end, which is this far left side. So I left it raw on the edge just to show you how I'm gonna turn that 3-inch side hem. And then I have a 10-inch space right here for that first box pleat, which is just gonna be joining these 2 pins together, which creates the box pleat. So that zigzag is this part right here. But I'm gonna start in the middle and work out from the center to put the box pleats in so that I can make sure I'm ending up in the right place all the way around the bed. Okay, so here we are at the very center. That's this part where I started with a seam right in the middle of the box pleat. So here is a seam right through the middle, and I have marked where I'm going to turn the box pleat, and it's gonna be 9 5/8 on each, almost 9 3/4 on each side. And the reason it didn't end up at 10 10 is because the stripe, where it's the whiter green section and then the skinny dark green ones, that landed in a spot where I needed to go just shy of the 10 inches so that I can have this part showing on the front. And that's how all of the sections are gonna look, rather than having some of them on this part and some of them on this part. So here I'm gonna pin that down, and I'm just lining up these edges, and then at the bottom, line up these edges. And I pinned it at the bottom too, so I can make it easy to notice where the box pleats go. So then I come to this side and go this way. And see how it's the same green stripe, light green stripe, and it's the same amount of that green stripe showing. I don't want a little part here and a big part there. I want the same amount on each side. And then line up those edges, same on the bottom. And I'm gonna pin it down because I need to move this around to get the whole thing pleated. So see, that is one whole box pleat that's gonna go right in the middle at the foot of the bed, right there. So then from there over on each side, this section needs to measure 38 inches. And I've already measured it and pinned it, so here's that next pin, and it's at the same place, so I have the same amount of that green stripe showing. And so now this pin indicates the center of this box pleat. This is gonna be the corner of the bed. So that's the center of the pleat. And you can see here is that seam, which is gonna land in the back of that first half pleat. Right there. So remember when I drew that, it's in the back of that first box pleat. So that one goes there, and then this one comes this way. And I'll pin that down. And now, so this is the corner. Now this next section is gonna be the first half of the side of the bed. So this part is gonna measure 40 inches. And you see I have the same green section. This will keep the pattern consistent and pleasing to the eye as you're walking around the bed. And then make sure all those pins line up at the bottom, just like they do at the top. And then once I have everything pinned, I'll measure it to make sure between all the take up and everything that it's measuring to size, and then I'll press these into place. But I don't want to press them until I measure. Center of this pleat to this pin is 40, and then I have the center of that pleat pinned. So here's the seam and a seam. This is that section I had to add for this side pleat right here. So that's why there's a smaller section, not one whole width, because I don't want to have any of these seams on the front of the skirt. So now I need one more section of 40 inches from here, the center of this pleat, to the start of the next pleat. is 40 inches over here. And I already have this side hem turned and stitched. So that is just going to get a half a pleat like that. That's at the head of the bed. So that should measure 40 inches. 40 inches. I'm halfway through. So I started in the middle and I went this way. Now I'll go back to the middle and I'll go that way. So here we have the last half pleat. So this pin to this middle pleat should measure 40. Yep, 40 inches there. And then I have 10 inches in here. So match those pins up. And that leaves me with 3 inches for side hem. I'm going to turn that and press it, and it's going to be right on the stripe. On the other end, I cut off that selvage. Turn it one more time and then stitch it down. You can take it to the blind hemmer if you want, but it's so short, I just did it by hand. That is how it looks at the end. Now all the box pleats are in place. I'm going to double check that everything measures what it should measure, and then I'll press it, press all the pleats down, and then it's ready to pin to the decking. And so the decking has the same stripe on the 3 sides, and I cut these strips at 6 inches and then turned this fold under with Dufix tape, top stitched it, and then this part is just serged onto the lining. So I'll get that ready and then I'll show you that part. Okay, so now I have all of the pleats pressed and pinned, and actually used the little tack gun to tack the bottom parts. And I pinned them just for temporary. I'll take those out before wrapping it up, but then I'll leave these in because I'm actually shipping this so that those pleats will stay kind of nicely packaged until they get to their final destination. So now I'm going to take this and connect it to the deck, get it ready to take it to the sewing machine. Okay, so I have the bed skirt laying right sides together on top of the deck, and I'm starting on the right hand side, and I have a pin marked on the deck at the halfway mark, and also I have a pin marked at the 1/2 inch seam allowance mark over here. So this is the mitered corner on the deck, and this is where I'm going to turn the corner with this pleat. So I want to clip the middle of that pleat so I can pivot and turn that corner easily. So I'm just gonna cut about a 1/2 inch little cut right there. That way I can pin it there, and then this one gets turned like this. And I think I'm gonna staple this skirt to the deck rather than pinning it, because some of the layers are really thick and it'll help me keep it in place better than the pins, and hopefully I won't injure myself. I kind of have it all pinned down now from the head up here down to that first corner pleat. So I'm gonna just start stapling it, making sure that all the edges are lined up, and probably should go in a little bit further so that I don't sew over these staples with my 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'll take these pins out from underneath as I go. And these staples are not going to damage the fabric. They're just like using pins. I think on the part where there's not all the pleats, I'm just going to pin because it's not so thick. That's less staples to remove. And then just staple over here in the end. That might even be too thick for the stapler. And I'm going to sew this on my walking foot sewing machine, so I don't even need to pin that. I'm just going to let that part hang out. It's not going anywhere. The walking foot sewing machine will be able to handle all this thickness. Kind of just making sure that there's no slack in the fabric. That makes it easier at the machine to make sure there's not going to be any extra once I get down here, which isn't so much of a worry on a walking foot, but if you're using a regular machine, I guess I have a habit of making sure that there's no slack, because on a regular machine, you're gonna have that fabric push if there's a little bit of slack. So I try to eliminate any slack. And I'll go around and sew this once, and then I'll check to see how the length is on the drop. And if I need to tighten it up, I'll definitely go around it twice, either right over the same stitch line, or I might go more than 1/2 inch if I need to take up more fabric, because I did leave a little bit of room for take up. And so if it doesn't take up as much as I anticipated, then I'll go in a little bit more than 1/2 inch. I have the first side stapled and pinned to the deck, and then I'll go over and do this side, and then I'll move the foot of the bed skirt. Doesn't fit across the table this way, so I'm just doing the 2 sides, and then I'll turn it and get the other side, or just move it around and do half at a time. That's probably what I'll do, and get that part pinned and stapled, and then go to the machine, and then it'll be almost done. Okay, I'm so happy this bed skirt is finished, and the side is measuring to 80, which is perfect. There's the end of the tape measure, and then the corner looks super nice. So does the side, but especially the corner. And the drop is measuring perfectly at 15.5. So everything turned out just right. And I also wanted to point out that the corners, I like to leave square. I used to round them off a little bit, but I have found that anytime I do that, the corner ends up a little bit short at the drop because of all that thickness and take up right there. So I just leave the corners square now, and everything turns out usually a lot better. So now I can wrap it up. I'm pressing the sides a little bit, and I'll press some of the wrinkles out just from handling it, but pretty much it's done. And I have just these little tags down at the bottom to keep it all together for shipping.